Tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here this morning. I do, before I begin, just want to acknowledge yet again the great contribution of Simon Bridges over the last 14 years. I think he's been a great champion for Tauranga, as I've said, a great champion for New Zealand and a great champion for the National Party. We're going to miss him, but we're going to wish him tremendously all the greatest success as he takes on a new commercial career and he goes forward with his life outside of politics. So thank you, Simon, and we wish you all the very best. Today what I want to do is be able to announce how we're going to reallocate his portfolios of finance and infrastructure, and I talked about that yesterday, but today I want to announce what we're going to do. And I'm very pleased to announce that Nicola Willis will take on the finance portfolio. Nicola has what I think is a very big brain, a very big, incredible intellect. She's got a prodigious work ethic, as many of you know, and she's got a proven ability to hold the government to account, as we've seen her do so in the housing portfolio so well. She also understands uniquely how finance and the finance portfolio interacts with all the other portfolios we have across government, and that all-of-government approach that I really want her to be able to lead as our finance minister. She's also, from my observation, been a very effective member of the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee here in Parliament, and previous to politics, as you know, held a number of senior management positions with Fonterra and has a really good business orientation, commercial orientation as a consequence. So I have absolutely no doubt that she's going to build on National's track record of being the best economic managers to help Kiwis get ahead. And I just want to say, Nicola, congratulations. It's incredibly well deserved and you are going to be absolutely brilliant as always, so thank you. I'm also very pleased to announce that Chris Bishop is going to be moving to the number 3 position in ranking, and he's picking up the infrastructure and housing portfolios. And as many of you know, Chris, I think, has done an exceptionally good job of leading the National Party response to COVID. He's been very constructive. He's opposed, but he's also proposed ideas along the way. And I know he's going to bring a lot of intellectual grunt to help us shape both these portfolios and policies in these areas of infrastructure and housing. I have to say, I personally feel infrastructure and how we fund it and how we fund future growth in New Zealand is one of our biggest and most intractable problems and challenges for this country going forward. I've spoken about this a lot, and I'm really determined that a national government ultimately solves it, because I can tell you now it's not working, and many other small advanced economies and countries, frankly, are doing it a lot better than New Zealand. And so success in housing, success in transport, success in local government are all going to be dependent and are enabled by how we develop infrastructure in this country. And it's not just what we invest in, it's actually how we go about doing it and how we deliver it. And I just feel Chris is uniquely positioned with his background in transport and infrastructure, well from his past experience. Again, he has a prodigious workload and a capacity for a large workload and a big brain as well. He's going to lead and shape our thinking around that, working closely with Simeon Brown on transport and Simon Watts on local government. But I expect Chris to be the lead that will take the lead in shaping up that agenda around infrastructure for us. So to summarise, it's pretty simple. Nicola takes on finance and keeps social investment. Chris takes on infrastructure and housing and keeps COVID-19 response, and also remains as shadow leader of the House and those responsibilities. And the only other changes are that Shane Retty moves from number 5 to number 4, and Paul Goldsmith comes into number 5 position. So in closing, I'd just say I feel really excited about these changes. I think you'll acknowledge that we've got really talented people leading both finance and infrastructure. We're going to continue the work that we've been doing since we started, which is we'll oppose the government strongly, but we'll also propose new ideas. And with that, happy to take any questions you may have.
In the past couple of years, National's had some problems with fiscal holes. Nicola, can you balance a budget?
Yes, and what I would say is that it's really important that you have good people around you, and I'm excited that we have a good team, both of advisors and other MPs with the skills we need to present a really good fiscal plan for New Zealand, and most importantly, an economic growth plan, and that's what we'll be doing.
Speaking of fiscal holes, what has Paul Goldsmith done to redeem himself?
Well, look, I mean, Paul Goldsmith, look, we all make mistakes. We get it 2 years ago, but it's how you get off the floor. You get beat up pretty badly in this job, and so it's how you respond to it. I think it's important, and I think he's done that very well. What he brings to us is 3 things, really. First and foremost, he brings us ministerial experience in that top team. Secondarily, he's actually got portfolios that we're very invested in and we want to make more of. So if you think about workplace relations, we think fair pay agreements and awards are going to be a big damage and a big hit to business and to this economy. When we look at justice in that portfolio and think about things like hate speech and some of the law and order issues that are coming, these are portfolios that we want to get into. And the third thing I'd say to you is that he also brings a perspective of, you know how I feel about it, and this party when it's at its best has got a moderate liberal and a moderate conservative tradition in it, and he represents that perspective in our party as well, and I want to have that encapsulated and captured in our top team. When the National Party's been at its best, that's a pretty simple recipe. Jess?
Nicola, this finance isn't often a role that women tend to take on. What does that mean to you? Well, women are half of the economy, and often it's women who are making the big spending decisions for their household. And so I see absolutely every reason why it's good to have a woman in this role, which should be very focused on how can we make sure that New Zealand households are getting ahead and feel that they have good prospects for the future. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity. I can see great challenges for New Zealand's economy and for New Zealanders, but I think with good government, we can resolve them.
Got a reputation for performing well in the House. Grant Robertson is probably a different kettle of fish. He's been around for a long time. What will it be like for you going against him?
Well, I think what New Zealanders will want to see from me is that I'm focused on the issues that affect them and that I'm putting forward solutions for the issues in their lives, rather than the contest in Parliament. I would say I have come up against Grant Robertson in the Wellington Central electorate over the course of a couple of campaigns. I know how he ticks, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to expose some of his weaknesses.
Simon Bridges was the parliamentary budget office, trying to save some of those fiscal holes in recent months and years. Are you yourself against the idea of some kind of a fiscal institution which cost money policy?
Well, I think that's something that we can consider another day. From our perspective, it's very important that New Zealanders can have trust in the costings that political parties provide ahead of elections, and that they can have confidence that they've been well tested, and we will be ensuring that our policies meet that test.
You've talked about issues and solutions. So what do you see right now as the biggest issue in the finance area, and what's your solution to it?
The cost of living crisis is a massive challenge for every New Zealand household. And the best thing that the government could do right now is let New Zealanders keep a little bit more of their money by providing them tax reductions in the upcoming budget. We believe that at a time when it's not just fuel prices going up, it's the groceries, it's rent, it's the interest bill, New Zealanders need some relief, and we will continue to push for sensible tax reduction. In the medium term, I'm deeply concerned, Jason, that we are going to see a massive brain drain from New Zealand. And that's because when our borders open, I think we're going to have a lot of young New Zealanders who have given up hope. They're seeing costs run laps around their wage growth. They're seeing that the opportunity to buy a home is vastly diminished, and they're seeing that their skills are often well remunerated offshore. So we have a challenge to keep our talented people here in New Zealand, and in the longer term, we have a challenge to ensure this is a more productive economy that can pay people more.
Do you feel like tax cuts over and beyond the threshold margins that you've indicated already?
Chris has laid out the package we think is achievable in this year's budget, and that's the package that I continue to encourage Grant Robertson to take up. It's a $1.7 billion package for the average wage earner. It would result in $870 in extra income. That's not going to make anyone rich, but right now, every dollar counts. And the question for Grant Robertson is, why do you think you have more of a call on that money right now than New Zealanders who are struggling?
You've got one.
Sorry, Jenna?
You've got one Māori in your top 20, one woman in your top 5. Is the National Party representative of New Zealand?
Look, I mean, as we've talked before, when we did the original caucus line-up, and there's no other significant changes apart from the two that we've really been announcing today, we've got a challenge around diversity. I've been very upfront from that from the very beginning. And so, we didn't have the diversity that we wanted post the election result. We're going to work really hard, watch for 2023, and we'll make sure it's going to come into the bloodstream of the party. So I hear... I've been very upfront about that. We don't have the diversity that we wanted to have, and we will get that for 2023. But what I'd say to you is, look, we've got look at our top 10. It hasn't, essentially what you're seeing there is the best regional dispersal that we can create. I think we've got a pretty balanced top 10.
What's your view of the standing leads? Probably one of the largest changes to government support over the last couple of decades
I'd note that John Key also implemented working for families and increased it over time, because what it's represented is a way of targeting tax reduction at families, and that has been an effective way of doing that. What's really important is the interaction between working for families and the tax system. And what we need to see is that there are good incentives for people to work. What we don't want is a situation where people say, no, I'm not going to take that promotion, I'm not going to work for a few more hours a week because then I'll lose my working for families. So looking at those abatement rates and how they interact with the tax system is critically important, and that's some of the work that I need to progress over the next few months.
So, Jason,
Will any more of your MPs be leaving between now and the election?
Look, that's up for each individual to decide, but the bottom line is, as I explained yesterday and as you saw yesterday, Simon came to an individual decision about that works for himself and for his family, and I fully support that and fully understand that.
Have any MPs told you that they plan to?
No, not at this stage, no. But to be honest, as we head for 2023, there'll be people that will be weighing up where they want to go. And what I can tell you is the great news over the summer period is that we've had a huge amount of interest of people who want to explore being prospective candidates for the National Party. So that's why, as we head into Tauranga, for example, I'm really confident we'll have a great candidate emerge, and we'll be able to fight that fight really well.
With Paul Goldsmith, over the last
Sorry.
4 months, with Paul Goldsmith, over the last 4 months, what's changed your mind? And he's gone up.
Well, look, I mean, really it's about the fact that his portfolios are areas that we feel very strongly about in the National Party. They're core equities of ours. We have a very strong difference of opinion with the government around the so-called fair pay awards. We think it is a big leap back into the 1970s. It's something that we think will be incredibly damaging to our economy in terms of labour, market mobility, flexibility, a whole bunch of challenges that I think will have massive impacts on business and the economy. So we want to prosecute that case more strongly. He's our justice spokesperson, and the reason for that is that there are things coming down the pike with respect to hate speech, with respect to law and order, that are things that are important to us. So for us, it's that. And I have to say, within our caucus, he's hugely respected, and he's a relational player in terms of he has strong relationships across the whole of the caucus. And so, as I've said to you from the very beginning, if you remember when we talked about the initial caucus lineup, I'm looking to use the complementarity of each of those individuals in that 33 to build a great team. And so he brings something that I really want to see and have in that top leadership group.
What part does his experience play? He, like Simon Bridges, has been around the block a few times, and you probably need a few people like that who've seen a few scandals and a few leadership coups in their time.
Yeah, look, I mean, as I said when we did the caucus lineup, we're moving away from a tenure seniority hierarchy. We're moving to a performance talent type lineup, but you've got to balance experience and emerging talent in a lineup. It's how you build good teams, fundamentally. And as I said, it has to be a team thing, because the footprint's much larger when you can add on all the individual bits that each individual person brings to that team. So it's about getting the blend of it right, and also you're working with the 33 MPs that you have and all their unique skills, and who's come through the election process, and making sure we can use all that ability. So I think we're doing it really well in terms of blending that experience.
Who will be your candidate in Tauranga?
We will work that out in the next few weeks. As I said to you before, we've had a lot of interest. We've had a new set of candidate recruitment programs and processes that we've put in place in the party. We kicked that off 2 weeks ago. I think we had something like 280 people who had expressed an interest in exploring getting involved in a campaign, getting involved with the party as a potential candidate, and all just learning more about the National Party. And so it's really quite exciting.
So definitely someone from outside.
Sorry?
So definitely someone from outside the party, not a current MP?
No, we'll work our way through that. That'll be a decision ultimately for the Tauranga National Party, electorate committee, to make a decision around who represents them and emerges as a candidate. And we have good processes around how we go from those expressing interest to a short list to a final candidate. Sorry.
Just on that same
Sorry,
question,
Jenna.
do you hope to address your diversity problem with that candidate?
Look, that'll be something that we're weighing up. Yep, absolutely. I mean, I want to see more diversity in the National Party. I've been really upfront from that, even as a candidate, when I first ran and gave my party list speech as to why I felt we needed to be promoting more diversity in the party. I've worked in organisations that are diverse, and I've built more diversity into them. Think about my story in New Zealand: 16% to 50% women. Setting targets around Māori Pacifica inside the business. I believe in diversity big time, because it leads to better outcomes, better results. So we'll go through that. Sorry?
You handed housing over to probably Nicola's biggest Do you see that as a bit of a change in policy, or is it basically continuing on?
No, look, let's be clear, housing has been a debacle under this government. You know, whether you look at home ownership, house prices are up $350,000 to over $1 million average price. You look at rentals, they're up $150 since this government came to power, over $7,300 a year after tax. You look at the state housing list up fourfold to 25,000. You look at what's happening with 4,500 kids in emergency homes housing last night. So either way you look at it, the outcomes are not being achieved and delivered. And that's what Nicola's been saying, is that we oppose the government and we will bring attention to the non-delivery and all the spin not adding up to delivery. But we've then got to have the ideas and the policies, because when we take government, we want to be moving at 100 kilometres an hour from day one. We're not mucking around. We're here to solve problems at that point. And so we want to have the solutions in place. Chris has got the grunt and the intellect to be able to carry on the work that Nicola's been doing and to build on it and to continue to prosecute the case, but importantly to develop the thinking. And housing and infrastructure are inextricably linked, as is transport and infrastructure, as is local government, central government, and how they work together or don't, and how we make that work. So that's why I want infrastructure and housing, and Chris taking the lead across our infrastructure portfolios to deliver that for us. Sorry, Thomas?
I was just saying goodbye to the housing portfolio and have reminisced about some of your time on the seat before going back there again. If you're finance minister in the future and there's another COVID period or something, and the Reserve Bank comes to you and asks once again for the finance minister to indemnify money printed, are you going to sign off that indemnity quite as easily as Grant Robertson did 2 years ago and get more money printed?
Well, look, obviously that's a hypothetical question. What is true, and I think Grant Robertson would agree, is that when you turn the money hose on really hard, it's like a sugar hit. It works for a short while, but in the end, people do pay a price. And New Zealand is paying that price right now. In terms of the Reserve Bank, I would note that Grant Robertson deliberately changed the terms of its engagement, in the sense that he made their goal maximum sustainable employment. And there are some economists who would say that the elevation of that goal has led to a looser monetary policy stance than may be the case. This is one of the issues that I want to put some time and effort into thinking about for the future of the New Zealand economy. It is important that we get the balance of monetary and fiscal policy right. But what I'd also say is this: there are different levers in the economy. Monetary policy is one of them. Another one that is critically important and that this government has neglected is the microeconomic reforms that allow individual businesses, innovators and firms to be more productive in this country. And that's everything from infrastructure to innovation to taxation settings, and all of that work must be done. We can't just rely on the Reserve Bank.
One of the things that Adrian has suggested, and other economists have suggested, is that you can use less monetary policy if you use more fiscal policy.
Correct.
If the Reserve Bank came to you and said, look, if you don't want house prices to go up another 10%, if you don't want me to turn on the money printing tax, you're going to need to spend more and borrow more. Is that a call that you're brave enough to make?
Well, that's a hypothetical question, Thomas, and as I've said, I do want to look carefully at how our monetary policy settings are serving New Zealanders and to ensure that they are best fit for us going forward. What I won't tolerate is a situation where we continue to see house prices spiral out of reach of young New Zealanders. It is unacceptable that in this country, the young people I speak to in their 30s say to me, well, I've given up hope of buying a home. These are people who work hard, who earn good money, who are saving hard, and they've given up that hope. We have to fix that.
Hey, can we go to Luke and then Bernard, and then we'll close with Jess?
Just a question for you, Nicola Willis, on debt. How concerned are you about New Zealand's level of debt, its trajectory, and how would you describe your general approach to government debt? Are you sort of a debt hawk, pay it off quickly, or kind of balance it with growth and other considerations?
Yeah. Well, it's a balance. Obviously, coming into the pandemic, our debt was relatively low on a comparative basis with other countries at about 19%. It's set to peak at 40% next year. And Nationals consistently acknowledged that it was appropriate for the government to take on debt to get us through an extraordinary crisis. The question for me, Luke, is actually how are we ensuring we're getting the biggest bang for every dollar we are spending. Because I think this government often loses sight of the fact that the dollars it's spending on, whether it's its Three Waters reform, whether it's light rail, whether it's merging RNZ and TVNZ, that's money that would otherwise be in the back pockets of New Zealanders. And so there needs to be a much more careful approach to government spending to ensure it's actually driving results. We shouldn't measure a government just by how much it spends, but by the results it gets for that investment.
Bernard?
Just on the economic policy area, what other areas apart from monetary policy are you looking at coming up with some new ideas?
I mean, the challenge, as I've said before, is this government's relied on two macroeconomic levers. One has been a 68% increase in government spending, and the other piece has been low interest rates. It's actually enlarged the remit of the Reserve Bank. We want it pared back to be very focused on price stability, as we've talked about before. The other two bits that I think are missing fundamentally is we have to be able to rein in government spending. And what I mean by that is we're not talking about cuts and austerity and all that stuff. We're saying spend money, but you have to be very intentional about that. We have no better public service targets in place anymore. So we spend money. We've added 14,000 bureaucrats at $1.8 billion, and we've got less outcomes. So there's a real need for us to be very thoughtful, prudent, smart, clever with making adjustments to our spending. The OECD is raising that with us. The National Party has been raising it for several months. The third thing that I think is what Nicola touched on is microeconomic business reform. We actually need to be able to unleash this economy so that we can actually open it up, so that it's not constrained as it has been. And secondarily, we need to get in behind and actually, back small businesses to have pro-business policy so they can actually build better businesses, more productive businesses, which lead to higher wages and salaries, which lead to people having more choices and freedom. So ultimately, for me, there's several levers not at play at the moment. The government's playing in the macroeconomic space, leaving all the heavy lifting to the Reserve Bank to do via interest rates to curb inflation, and actually they need to take some fiscal responsibility around, one, making sure we're adjusting spending and being smart with it, making sure there's good return on investment, good fiscal discipline, which I think has gone out the window under this government. And the second thing is we need pro-business, pro-enterprise policies that actually get small businesses, which is the lifeblood of the place, up and running and moving forward, and having the confidence to do so. Nicola's exactly right. Our biggest fear is that we need to build an opportunity society here in New Zealand. And if you're a young, enterprising entrepreneur who wants to start up a business in New Zealand to employ some people to make something happen, the danger at the moment is you're looking at Canada, you're looking at Australia and saying, maybe I'd take myself, my hard work, my ethic, my ideas to those kind of countries, and is there more opportunity there than there will be here in New Zealand? That's what we've got to work really hard at in the coming years to make sure the best and the brightest stay in New Zealand. I came through a time in New Zealand's history where we hit high levels of unemployment, we had high levels of inflation, interest rates, and my generation went overseas. I was overseas for 16 years because, people felt, a whole bunch of New Zealanders felt that there was more opportunity somewhere else. We have to build opportunity here. We can't have that happen when we get back and through the COVID crisis.
Just on the productivity issue,
Yep.
would you consider any changes in the tax settings around taxing capital or wealth or corporate profit to try to change the productivity story?
I think our productivity story, you've got to get into the detail of microeconomic reform. And that's where I think there is no interest from this government, there's no understanding of it, and we haven't seen a single policy really that's about doing that. So I think, as you know, productivity's been an intractable disease in New Zealand for the last 30 years. There's a whole bunch of contributors to it, but you have to be ruthless and go through the root cause and start to deal with each and every one of those issues and try and work out how we lift our performance. Listen, just last, yes. Well, the first thing I said is you can start to think about government spending. So we've gone through a huge period of government spending. We've got $6 billion of additional government spending about to be unloaded on us in May. The Reserve Bank, the OECD is already saying to New Zealand, hey, listen, that's incremental new money that gets loaded in for the next 4 years into your new baseline. Is that money you need to be spending smartly, cleverly, make sure it's working for you? I think there's also a real loss of fiscal discipline. When you don't have better public service targets in this government anymore, how can you add 14,000 bureaucrats at $1.8 billion, and actually we haven't got any better public service outcomes. We've got to be much clearer and much more direct and accountable about that stuff. So I think those are the things that we would start to say. So it is for inflation. Yep, you're going to use interest rates, but yes, you've got to think about government spending, and you also have to think about microeconomic reform.
Chris,
Okay.
I'm conscious you said last
Yes.
question, but
Yes.
if you'll indulge me, there's just two personal reflections I'd like to make before we leave. The first is I want to acknowledge Simon Bridges. I think he's done an extraordinary job of bringing to life the cost of living crisis that the government, right up until this week, was very prepared to deny was real. I want to acknowledge him and his service to the National Party and thank him for the offer he's already made me to help me on my way. And I also just want to reflect that my first job out of university was with a man called Bill English. And when he took me under his wing, I was his researcher. And he said to me, in politics, it's about making a difference for other people. And in this job, as the education spokesperson he was then, I'm going to do that. And if you work alongside me, you'll learn an awful lot about how to do that too. I did learn an awful lot from him. I admire him immensely, and he is one of the mentors that I will certainly be going to for support and encouragement as I embrace this incredible opportunity to make a difference for New Zealand.
Awesome. Well said. On that note, we'll close. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good day.